Back. Thom Hartmann here with you. So just, going through some of the stories of the day, it just boggles my mind how much this... This is Mitch Smith and J.C. Fortin in today's New York Times. Sam Brownback, the beleaguered governor of Kansas, whose aggressively conservative fiscal policies turned some fellow Republicans against him. I would say whose aggressively conservative fiscal policies destroyed his state, will be nominated to serve as ambassador at large for international religious freedom. Mr. Brownback, 60, represented his home state in Congress before being elected to 2 terms as governor beginning in 2011. Right. This guy couldn't get elected dog catcher, so they threw him a bone. It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, apropos of Trump going after trans people yesterday, in order to satisfy a couple of crazy right-wingers in the U.S. House of Representatives, one of them in particular, I retweeted her gibberish yesterday. You can check it out. They were saying, basically, we're not going to give you funding in this House Appropriations bill for your much-beloved Mexican wall unless you cut funding, this $2 to $8 million a year in funding for medical support for trans people in the military. Now, keep in mind, this is the same military that spends $80 million a year on erectile enhancement products like Viagra. $80 million a year, between $2 and $8 million a year for trans people. Just to put this in context, I just want to read a poem. This is an old poem. I'm sure most of you will recognize it. It's over on the website of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. It's by Pastor Martin Niemöller. He wrote this just after he was taken off to a concentration camp in the 1930s. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. An attack on trans people is an attack on all of us. We are all human beings here in this country. And for Trump to attack trans people just so he could get funding for his wall in a cynical political ploy is pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And then you've got Trump threatening Murkowski. You got Jeff Sessions saying that gay people are not protected under from discrimination under federal law. Now, keep in mind, trans people and gay people, different things. Trans has to do with gender identity. Gay has to do with sexual preference. They're different things, but it's different than the quote norm. So Donald Trump feels free to go after these people. And then, Scaramucci, this is just pathetic. There's an interesting piece over at BuzzFeed News by Adrian Carrasquillo, I'm pronouncing it right, in Washington, D.C. And Adrian, the headline is, Trump actually likes making people's lives living hell, as Sessions is finding out. Trump, famous for firing people on TV, doesn't relish doing so in real life. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a particular skill set to get them to resign. And Trump, in one of his ghostwritten books, it's called The Apprentice. I'm sorry, it's not The Apprentice. It's whatever it is. Anyhow, in one of his books, he talks about how difficult it is to fire people. He doesn't like firing people. So what he does is he shames them and humiliates them and berates them, and eventually they quit. There's a whole book, literally, not a book, an entire article about this over at BuzzFlash News that is fascinating. Trump, in his book, Way to the Top, was his 2004 book. He says, I don't like firing people. It's not a pleasant thing. Right. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I wonder if when he was a little kid, Trump delighted in pulling the wings off flies. You know, I mean, like George W. Bush, did he torture little animals? I just want to come back to this for just a minute, and then I'll pick up your phone calls here. But if you go back to 1787, the Constitutional Convention met in Philadelphia and came up with a constitution through August, September, October of 1787, through the summer and early fall. And then began the process of trying to sell this thing, which is what the Federalist Papers were all about over the next year and a half. It wasn't ratified until 2 years later, in 1789, which is when we officially became a country, or a new country, a federal republic. We had been a country operating under the Articles of Confederation before that, but arguably we really weren't a country. There were 13 countries with a trade agreement. That was the Articles of Confederation. So anyhow, James Madison had been shepherding the Constitution through, and he's very proud of it, and justifiably so. I mean, he spent years, 5 years actually, studying constitutions historically, all the way back to ancient Greece, right? Studying constitutions, looking at the Iroquois Confederacy, among other things. So he sends a copy of it to Jefferson. Says, what do you think? And Jefferson says, I like this and this and this, but here's what I don't like. And one of the things that Jefferson suggested, and this led to a conversation, you can read their letters online, I'm sure, between Jefferson and Madison, was the danger of religion. Jefferson wanted, not only was there already in the Constitution an explicit ban on religious tests, but he wanted freedom of religion and the press to be attached to the Constitution as a separate Bill of Rights. Madison thought it was unnecessary. In fact, he was worried about a separate Bill of Rights because he thought that might cause people to think these are all the only rights you have. And Jefferson said, no, you've got to say this out loud. No religious test. And then Jefferson goes off on this thing about how the people of America will never be stupid enough to elect somebody who is, a priest, a religious person, a person who puts religion ahead of other things in their lives. And Madison said, well, that doesn't scare me as much as the federal government starting to give money to churches. Should we ever start supporting individual churches in this country, we're going to corrupt the churches with our money. So Jefferson was afraid about religious people having political power. Mike Pence, hint, hint. And Madison was afraid about the federal government giving money to churches, which we do every day. George Herbert Walker Bush started this 1,000 Points of Light thing. And, all this, let's just pass out money to churches. And we're doing that. And now church schools, Betsy DeVos is expanding that. So this country was literally founded on the idea that we don't do religion in the United States. Religion can be done in the United States, but we the people, we the government, we don't do religion. And now Donald Trump is appointing loser Sam Brownback, the guy who destroyed Kansas with his Reaganomics experiment. He's going to appoint him religious ambassador. Our founders and framers are rolling over in their graves, I'll tell you. And frankly, probably many of the people who fought and died for this nation in the 240 years since then. It's incredible.